Hello everyone, welcome to the 16th episode of the Superintendent Spotlight. Today we have kind of a unique topic because certainly what we're going to talk about relates to our schools, and we'll hear more about that in the second segment. But I have some special guests for this first segment, and we're going to talk about the formation, development, and the activities of the Hingham Coalition. Hingham Coalition is a relatively new entity in town, about a year and a half old, I would say, Fran. We're very excited about the topic, giving people greater awareness about the topic of drug prevention and drug abuse in our community and actually throughout the country. So my three guests for this first segment are to my immediate left, Fran Donlin, and Fran is the co-chair of our new Hingham Coalition. And next to Fran is Chief Glenn Olson, Hingham Police Department Chief, and next to Glenn is Kathy Crowley, and Kathy Crowley is from the Hingham Health Department. And certainly Kathy, Glenn, and I have been involved in the pre-coalition activities about a year and a half ago in the fall, together with Paul Gannon, a group of us, mostly town employees at the time, convened and talked about this problem that had been designated as a public health crisis, actually, earlier by the Mass Department of Public Health, and what we could do to begin to bring awareness in our community. And the result of that first set of meetings was a forum that we had a year ago in October, well attended, we thought, for our first foray. But subsequent to that, that first forum, we solicited community input, and we established or tried to get started a coalition. And so some of the people that you're going to hear from today are part of that, and certainly that was the case with Fran, who joined our group. Did you actually go to the forum that we had?
I did, yes.
And that's where you became aware?
Yes.
And so we formed a coalition, and so Fran is now the co-chair of that coalition. A lot of credit goes to Selectman Paul Gannon for getting us all organized in the beginning. So, Fran, tell us about the development of that and how we came to form a mission and talk about membership and structure. So walk us through, first of all, how you initially became involved. You went to the forum and you said, gee, this is something I want to do because.
Thanks for having us, Dr. Gallo. Well, personally, being at that meeting, and it struck a personal chord with me, and I've been in recovery from alcohol for 30 years. And I had my own struggle, and seeing what was happening to the kids, whether it was with the use of drugs or alcohol, it had an impact on me. And even more specifically, there was one day that in my office about a year ago, I used to see this young boy come in to borrow some money from his mother. On occasion he'd come in, nice kid, about 19, 20 years old. And then one morning, about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we all got a call that Danny had died and had overdosed in Situate as a young kid. And boy, did that hit home. And again, personally, having my first drink at 13 years of age, I certainly didn't make a informed and responsible choice, and it did lead me some other way. So that was the catalyst for me to get involved, and I was fortunate enough to have just a number of people in Hingham, both from the private sector and from the public sector, that sort of said, let's get on this train and try to help the kids, try to lead a life that will keep them from harm. And it didn't take long before we were able to accumulate maybe about 20, 25 initial members.
Very regular attendees.
Every month we had our meetings every month, and it took a little while for us to put together an organizational chart. And I have to commend you for your perseverance and submitting the org chart that we had finally some boxes to fill in for the co-chairs and the leaders of each of our groups, and we formed what we would call the 12 sectors. And the 12 sectors of a coalition historically, it's been proven that if you have members from the police, the law enforcement, the schools, the youth organizations, the clergy, the health and wealth providers, community leaders,
Parents,
business members, government agency, if you have that, the comprise of that group, it really proves to be a very successful organization. So we now have close to 50 people that come to our meetings.
Mm-hmm. And our mission from day one, I guess, has mainly been about awareness and education.
Right.
Those are some of the
Yeah, the main mission, Dr. Gallo, is to obviously create awareness and, to actually to create and foster a really strong and inclusive community that encourages a healthy lifestyle. If we can get the kids to kind of have that healthy lifestyle, they may go down the right path. And it also, we also look for, support, responsible and choices about the use of drugs and alcohol. And how do we do this?
Right.
Do this through presentations to the various groups in the communities, education, acting as a resource to the community. We've created a brochure. Actually, we've got a couple of brochures that we've created. One can be picked up at the high school with from Kathy Crowley. The other one can be picked up at the Hingham Police Station, and it's a terrific resource for anybody that needs immediate help, or if anybody wants to find out a little bit more about our coalition and actually become a stakeholder.
Mm-hmm. And certainly along the way at our meetings, we've had some wonderful speakers who brought us a lot of information, particularly statistics and information about drug abuse, and particularly about the opioid epidemic that's going on. I know that I've been kind of blown away at times by the statistics that we have heard about. And the speakers are people that just are folks in our community who kind of came to a meeting, and we heard that they had some information that we wanted to share. So we've been educated in the process as well as trying to get word out to other folks. I guess too, from day one, we've said this is not simply a problem about our youth and our children. People become addicted for any variety of reasons, and the data that we get from the Department of Public Health gives us information about the different age groups. And in fact, I think it was the age group 19 to 35 that seems to be the biggest group in terms of use. So Glenn, you've been aboard since the beginning.
Yes, and
when we were all requested to come to a meeting by Paul and to start to plan the forum. I think one of the things as we trying to get information out there was to be cautious about how we promoted data. People want local data, and I think all of us as town employees and local citizens realize that there might be people in our community who might think, well, this is not happening here. It's not happening here in our town. That's happening in other places. So I think we've struggled a bit to come up with some data that says, yeah, it is happening here. So talk about some of the ways that we get data that can be useful in helping us to identify the problem.
Well, I think first of all that there's a lot of different resources out there for the different data, and I think most of us have certainly been seeing it. The state of Massachusetts and the governor has been doing some great work at getting the message out and changing the laws. The Mass Department of Public Health has some great figures that are available on their website, and the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, has all sorts of national ones. I think the ones that sort of interest me more is basically what's happening on the local levels. And as you said, one of the things that we've done many speaking engagements, and people have always asked, well, what are the numbers in Hingham? And I really try to direct the people away from that, because one of the questions I would ask at a meeting is that how many people in this room know somebody, are aware of somebody that's affected by drugs or some type of addiction problem. And you'll always get 2 or 3 different people in that room to raise their hands.
And more, and almost any four.
We recently had a detective that went to a meeting at a local rehab to talk to about some other things, and it turns out that there were numerous residents from Hingham. And I think that one of the things that really makes data hard to get is because so often it never reaches the stage of being in the Department of Mental Health or to the different other state organizations, because people have the resources to treat it privately. So I try to stay away from those data, but I think it's pretty obvious to me, and I think everyone you end up talking to, that somebody is aware of problems that are going on, and I think that's the greatest judgment. And one of the resources that I sort of find interesting is the studies that you do at the schools. You do, I think it's a youth risk assessment.
Yes, we're going to talk about that. in
Yeah,
another
and I think those are valuable tools, because I always say it's the children that are the best way to educate and get information from. And those are the goals, that if we can educate them and provide them, factually and get them to make the good choices, and the school is great at doing that. So those are the sources that I like more than anything.
Right. And we've talked a bit in some of our meetings about related topics, such as the issue with over-prescription of medications that are problematic and often are the beginning of someone's problem with addiction. So talk a little bit about some of the things we've done about the prescription piece.
Well, I think that's basically what brought the opioid epidemic to the point that it is the large amount of prescriptions. And you'll often hear people say, I went in for a simple prescription and I got a month's worth of of oxycodone, and I only planned on it for a week. So we're trying to educate people of the fact that if you don't want a month's prescription, tell your doctors. If you have extra prescriptions, we have a 24-hour resource at the police department that people can come in and drop off their unused drugs. And we've talked about educating people that if you're having people visiting the house, if your house is for sale, there's actually been reports of incidences where people come in to look at your house, not because they're interested in buying it, but because they just want to get to your medicine cabinet. And they'll steal the medicines out of there and go about their merry way. So it's definitely a problem with unused prescriptions. And we're trying to get to doctors. The state and the other police departments are working closely with doctors, trying to control the prescription overuse, overprescription. And when I sort of look at it, and I can't sit watching TV without seeing some sort of medication ad on TV about urging people. So we've become a society of we can fix it with a pill, and that sort of needs to be a re-education process.
And we'd probably be remiss when we started planning this meeting. This bill hadn't passed, but just in the last week or so, the governor has signed a new bill.
Yes.
And it has to do with lots and lots of things, some of the things that the school department is going to need to take care of. But on the broader scope, just the issue of prescription medication and limiting the number of doses that can be given out at any one time. Do you think that's going to make a difference?
Oh, it certainly is going to make the difference, because the idea is that the availability of those drugs aren't going to be there for people. We all have this bad habit, I know, often, that people would always save their medications in case you needed them for later.
Right.
Very bad habit. There's that's why we're encouraging people to do that. And I think the legislation and the awareness that's out there now is making a great impact. We're also working with the local pharmacies. There's lots of different processes that they have to control the medications, and they can check to make sure that people aren't getting it at multiple different locations. And that's an education process, and I think the law still needs to put some teeth into that law to make the doctor and the pharmacists comply a little bit more than they are.
Great. Kathy's going to tell us a little bit about the Coastal Connection, which is a regional group that we've become affiliated with. But with respect to a very large grant that we are going to apply for, and you've been to the meetings about it and trying to garner us all
I was really,
to action.
Really excited about that opportunity. The Plymouth County Sheriff's Department and the Plymouth County DA's office put together a presentation on a grant opportunity that's available to towns from the drug-free community. It's a federal government grant. This grant would actually provide us the groundwork that we need to move to our next step. The coalition's good. We've been doing our research. We've been doing our education. What we need now is to sort of take this to the next level, and this grant would definitely allow us to do it. We have a year to prepare. It's like all federal grants. They're very driven by data. And this grant would actually provide the coalition up to $125,000 a year to continue this for the next 5 years. It would allow us to basically hire the people to run the program, and then I think the biggest challenge we have now, without that program going forward, we don't have the beds for treatment. And police departments have been looking at ways to create and get people into beds. These types of grants will allow us to allow a partnership with the public health facilities, the private facilities, because if we can't get them in a bed, it's not going to help any. People are willing. A lot of police departments have taken the initiative. Gloucester has some great programs. Plymouth has a great program. They're actually assigning officers basically to go to someone's door and provide them the assistance and the ride to get to where they have to go to.
Right.
So until we get those beds lined up, we're limited on what we can do.
Right. We'll hear more about that in the second segment. But just our last meeting, we had Judge Heather Bradley there talking about the new drug court program in the Hingham District Court, and certainly talked about the issue there of getting people into treatment rather than into jail or
Yes,
some other
yeah.
punitive setting. So that's great to know that we can make some movement in that. A lot of work. And I
Yeah,
credit you with,
it is. Yeah,
getting us
and
involved in that.
I always know that, people always look and say, they're always commenting that, the courts don't do stuff. The courts can be very resourceful, and I think this is a clear case where Justice Bradley is coming in, and she's the person in charge now of Hingham District Court. We're very lucky to have a good working relationship with her, and she's going to be running this drug court, and I think it's a great opportunity to finally get people to put them into a treatment center that we know that's going to work.
Right.
And I think the idea is that I still believe that if people, if we don't give them that option through the courts, they're just going to end up being repeat offenders all the time.
Right. Or worse.
Or worse, yeah.
So talking about grants, the perfect segue into Kathy's talk. We did receive in each of the last 2 years a smaller grant that really was for getting organized and that we could use for things like printing posters or flyers or those kinds of things. And I think we still have some of those resources available. But certainly from your perspective, this is very much in your day-to-day work. It impacts all of us, but as part of the Hingham Health Department, this is a critical issue. So you get together regularly with other people in your role in other communities. And so you've been to a lot of meetings, but in particular, a couple meetings that were intended to set up a regional group. So talk about the coastal connection.
Sure. I think when we formed our own Hingham Coalition, we realized that there wasn't one person, one department, one interest group that could really do the whole job. And I think we see that, throughout the state, that the governor is asking for legislator and for communities and everyone to combat this epidemic. And throughout our own interest groups, we realized that we need to network and work together to share ideas, to share grant money, to share programs, and everyone that's in any coalition is willing to help other people to get to the point where they are at, or to share anything that they've seen as successful. So that being said, we have a coastal coalition with 4 towns. It's Cohasset, Hull, and Norwell, and we're working together. We see it as a networking coalition. We'll have our Hingham coalition as well, but this is something, a 4-town alliance.
And most recently, you've been working on putting together a little brochure for resources. So often we hear from the first responders, police and fire folks, that sometimes they transport someone. They think that likely this is a drug overdose kind of situation, but you really never know, and there are all kinds of HIPAA laws that mean sometimes it's hard to collect all the data that we have, but then the family is left behind. So there's a transport, and the family is left behind, and perhaps the person is released the next day. And so just providing information that we could leave behind,
Right.
that the first responders could take and leave with the family as they do whatever it is they need to do with the patient. So where have you come up with all the resources that are going to be part of that?
Well, we've just tried to help people. It's a time in their lives that they're lost, and it's, you know, they're sleep deprived and they don't know where to turn. So we're trying to help them to have a resource list, including our own department, that they can call and ask for advice. We can help them with referral. We can help them with any kind of brochures. We're trying to keep it somewhat South Shore related. So that
And so these are things like not just treatment centers, but other kinds of help that folks might want. So
Correct.
What would be some examples of
some of
other?
the support groups that they can go to, insurance information, all of the
Legal information.
legal information, all of the steps that might help somebody, an individual or a family in that situation.
Right. So that was a very practical kind. We're not always as practical in our coalition meetings. We receive a lot of information, we try to share it, but then we thought we really want some concrete
That was a nice
things
piece that
come out.
Chief Glenn Olson put together for us. It was an accumulation of all the different treatment facilities and support groups. The chief took it a step further and put our logo on it for the coalition. So that's a piece that he will be handing out and giving to his officers when they go out and they go to an unfortunate incident.
Right.
And I actually should thank Situate Facts, which is a group that has received this grant. They actually put it together, I think, in the law enforcement community. When it comes to sharing information, we believe that it's always okay to sort of share the information and put your logo on it.
Right.
So,
Pass it forward.
yeah,
And, you know,
exactly.
The Situate folks received their grants a number of years ago, and I've often thought they had a broader kind of mission in terms of the use of those dollars, but how this problem has exacerbated since the time they received their grant, and I wonder about needing to change direction, because it's just been such a rapid rise of a serious problem for us.
Yeah.
I want to have you mention, Fran, that we share lots of information like resources, but also good speakers, good presentations, worthwhile programs that we can bring to folks. And so we're going to have week after next, I think it
Yes.
is, at Hingham High School.
Yes,
Talk about the
we're very excited. Our coalition is very excited about having the drug story. The drug story is the brainchild of Dr. Joseph Schrand, who's a psychiatrist dealing with addiction for adults and young children as well. So he started this a couple of years. It's been traveling around the local high schools. This is a play that's put on by recovering teens. It's fabulous. I happened to go to the one in Hull last month, and they're in recovery. They have a very simple 45-minute play. It's coming to our Hingham High School in the auditorium Monday evening, April 4th at 7 p.m. It's a 45-minute play. There'll be some talk back, give and take conversation after the play with the five teenagers and 2 of the parents, and they all are part of this recovery process, and it will be over in time for people to go home and watch the NCAA finals.
Oh, good. That's
I'm
good.
told that's an important
And we're
thing,
certainly
so-
encouraging parents to come with their teenage
Absolutely,
children,
yes.
but community members, we're
Open,
getting
it's
the
free,
information
it's open
out,
to the public.
PTOs
We
and so on.
we are coating the neighborhoods and towns with publicity. So look to hear more about it in the next week or so.
Right, I'm actually going to send out a flyer to my X2 email list tomorrow.
All right.
With some other community pieces of information. So Kathy, tell us how someone might find out more about our organization in terms of attending a meeting. We typically meet once a month at 5 p.m., which is a good time for most folks. And we notify members by email, but if someone wanted to get their email to us or make you aware, what would you suggest they do so that they could be notified?
Sure, they can just call the Hingham Health Department at 781-741-1466. Would be happy to give them the information. We welcome everyone. We can certainly use everyone's help and expertise.
Right, and almost every meeting we have a few new folks that come along, and you know, it's not the kind of organization where you have to commit to coming to every single meeting.
Absolutely.
We welcome whenever people can come. Also, it's the kind of organization where you can get involved in doing some real projects, or just come for the awareness and the information that we get. So, so everyone is welcome. Okay, we're running short time on this segment, so I'd like to ask each of you, is there something that you think our audience might need to know or like to know that I haven't asked you about? Kathy, why don't we start with you? Can you think of anything that we've missed? And
I would just say that I think that, you know, throughout our work, we've seen a lot of positive progress. I think that people are really understanding that addiction is a disease. It's not a failure. I think that people have become more aware that with treatment, it's not a lifelong sentence, and I feel like there's a lot of positive things happening in this whole arena.
thank you. Glenn?
I'd really just like to echo what Kathy said, because I think she's sort of hit it on the head, and I hope that individuals, my officers, responding department personnel and other departments, that we're looking at it with a different viewpoint now, that these are people that seriously need some help. It is not this issue where it's hidden in the back alleys, and I hope that each family can sit down and have discussions and talk about this with their family, because it's an important subject and it does affect everybody, and we need to make it comfortable enough for people to know about it, and that's the only way we'll get
And to be able to reach out.
yeah, exactly.
And I would
Fred?
add also that for the parents out there and the students to be on the lookout for more of our public awareness programs and educational efforts. It takes a while to get something accomplished, and it's not done in a year or 2 years, but it's a constant vigilance. And the strength that our coalition has and the community has to protect our kids is just enormous. So look for more of our coalition efforts out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for joining
Well,
me
thank you.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
This is the end of the first segment, and we'll return in just a bit with some folks that we can talk about the education piece of it a little more in detail, in particular education in the Hingham Public Schools. So thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back. Hello and welcome back. This is segment 2 of the 16th episode of the Superintendent Spotlight. And today we're focusing on the problems of drug abuse and drug abuse prevention. In the first segment, we talked with some of our founding members of a coalition in Hingham. It's about 1.5 years old. And in this segment, we're going to talk more about what's happening with our youth, and also with respect to the kinds of treatment options that there are available. So my guests for this segment are Megan Broderick, and Megan is, I think you came to the very first meeting we had with the coalition. She's been a regular attendee. I don't think you've ever missed a meeting, so Megan will talk about some of her particular interests in the coalition and the work of the coalition. And then I have Lori McCarthy here, and Lori is a Hingham resident, but also National Clinical Director, Outreach Director for Gosnold, which is a treatment facility, a private facility. We'll hear more about your perspective about that. but certainly your perspective as a parent is a real important one today. And then Karen Beatty, and Karen Beatty is our resource teacher for health education in the Hingham Public Schools. She teaches the classes at the high school, but we'll talk a bit about what is offered at all levels and how this particular problem is very much part of our thinking and part of what we do in Hingham. So I'll start with Meg. So what was it that prompted you to get involved and to come to the first meeting? Did you also go to the forum that
I did.
kicked off? Okay.
So prior to the forum, I started thinking about this issue years ago when my girls were born, because there's addiction on both sides of our family.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wanted to make it a topic of conversation and stop the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to that, I had the opportunity to coach and teach some of the youth in our community, and became connected to them and thought about, as they were growing, what valuable, beautiful children these are. I hope they make great choices as they grow older. So I had the opportunity to go to the forum, and I was so impressed by the panel of people there, the knowledge and commitment. There was the Hingham Police, Fire, Ambulance, Plymouth County DA, South Shore Hospital, Learn to Cope, and
Department of Public Health. We had
right,
someone there.
and the impact of what they had to say and the knowledge. I was so impressed, and I knew it was something I wanted to become involved with.
Mhm.
And I was able to sign up and start then.
Come to the
Yeah.
meetings, right? And we put together a mission, and actually our high school students, SAD students, contributed some ideas to the draft of a mission that we had, and we came up with a brochure with a logo, and that was done by Ryan Echauzier, who's our graphics teacher at the high school, and some of his students, so we involved kids from early on. When we put together our organizational chart, we had one of the committees was the committee for activities. So you were interested in doing
Right.
things. So most recently you've been working on a PowerPoint kind of
Right.
presentation. You got the idea from where? Somebody else had done one
From
locally.
Safe Harbor Cohasset, their town meeting.
Okay. And so tell us about the kinds of things that you're interested in putting into that PowerPoint, and then how you would envision it being used.
Okay, so as far as the data collection goes, I think it's a very important tool because it helps with a clear message of what is happening in Hingham as well as the surrounding towns. And what we did focus on was how some of the opiate addiction problems stem from doctor-prescribed painkillers that are actually being prescribed to our children and other family members, and once that's done, it's in the house. We also talked about how the high percentage of addiction can also come from sports injuries, where we have over 70% of our high school students involved in interscholastic school sports, and that this can become an issue. Also about wisdom teeth, how about saying leaving that doctor's office and having the option of taking ibuprofen or Tylenol instead of leaving with that prescription and bringing it into your home. And then in that PowerPoint is also information from the Cohasset Coalition regarding current trends and some of those disturbing trends that we're seeing in the schools, which were vodka-soaked gummy bears, hand sanitizer mixed with fruit juice, the ability to hide some painkillers inside cutout tennis balls or hairbrushes or soda bottles or water bottles, and then the youth risk survey, which was helpful in pointing out certain percentages of students at the Hingham Middle School and high school who did drink or smoke marijuana or happened to get into a car with someone who had been drinking and was driving, or taking painkillers prescribed for someone else.
All kinds of risky behaviors. And we have creative kids in Hingham, writing creative
Yeah.
kids, sometimes not in the best decision-making way. But so now you have this pretty well all put together, and we had didn't talk much with Fran about this, but we had this year, instead of doing a forum, we decided that we'd do some other kinds of outreach,
Right.
such as to places like Linden Ponds, because certainly among the seniors there are issues
Right.
too. So we've been doing outreach, and that's one area where you might use this PowerPoint. Can you think of other audiences perhaps that we might engage in a discussion and use that
I think it
as
would be
information?
wonderful for even May 18th, our next meeting, inviting parents to come, anywhere we can see parents or students who can view this information and understand what's happening. And then even Fran from the first segment, he suggested maybe even the library, which I think is a good thing. And maybe it could be part of a topic if we were able to have a next town forum, which I think would be excellent.
All right, great. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So Lori, you're a parent, but you're involved in treatment
Yes.
and a private facility. So before we talk about students and what we can think about and worry about, can you tell us a little bit more about your specific job and,
Sure,
and what your role is?
So I have a sort of a wide lens on this topic. For me, it's it's a crucial, critical, and very important topic. I'm very happy to be part of it. So at Gosnold, I am the outreach director. I have been a substance abuse counselor. I've been an interventionist, and now I work primarily with the senior leadership team on this issue and overseeing some programs that we've been implementing as a result of the opiate epidemic.
Do you have some programs that are beyond the treatment information
Yeah.
programs, for
So
example?
and then Gosnold it's not a private facility. It is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit.
Okay.
So because of the opiate crisis, it really forced us to look at in the age of the people that we're seeing that have been most affected, which I think it was said in the first segment, 18 to 34, and that age group, and what we could do to really prevent the cycling in and out of detoxes. So you have, they go to detox, they come out, they relapse, they go back to detox, they come out. And so it was really looking at what extended support we could offer these individuals, a lot of them young adults that don't have a whole lot of life skills anyway, and coming up with some recovery management programs. We call it sort of the bookends of treatment. That would be on the back end. And then the front end is what everybody's here for today, and that's prevention. And what can we do in the areas of prevention so that people don't end up dependent and having to go to a hospital or detox, for treatment. And those programs include a lot of, what the governor is doing. We're incredibly impressed with. I think the prescription monitoring things that he's put in place are going to help, make a difference. And then doing assessments in schools for, I know that's going to come, substance abuse assessments, and that I think will include things like genetic predisposition and personality and risk factors and what kids are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior using substances and things like that. Also, the governor has put in the bill educating the medical community more so that doctors have more addiction education. And it's really just a very wide net of community collaboration, which has never been part of the addiction arena. It's really, addiction has always been very stigmatized, sort of over here under the, cover, so to speak. And with the crisis, really as a result of tragedy that's happened, entire communities are now coming together, such as Hingham, which is a wonderful thing. It's school, it's law enforcement, it's treatment providers, it's the medical community, and how can we prevent addiction? How can we keep our kids healthy and making good decisions? And then also when they don't make good decisions, what is our response to that? And how we can maybe move the response to that so that there's more help available for families, that they're not afraid to go forward, they're not afraid to go to a school or the police department or, you know, the other public offices in Hingham where they can get help without judgment. I think it's really important.
You mentioned people going for treatment, relapsing, and so on. It seems to me from some of the speakers that we've had at the coalition that that has been a topic that it may take more than one cycle of treatment.
Yeah,
it may
it's
take
really
many. And
it's really difficult because addiction is a brain disease and it affects the areas of the brain that that is judgment oriented, that is you know, rational thinking,
Still
and
developing
impulse
among
control.
teenagers as well.
With teenagers, it's the developing brain that's not there. So it's very difficult to expect that a brain that has become dependent on a drug is going to be well in 5 days of treatment or even 30 days of treatment. It's a chronic disease that needs to be managed like any other chronic conditions, and recognizing that means that the back end of treatment has to be very significant. It has to be a mobile sort of force. We have coaches working with people, and not just the young adults, but also, you know, also anyone really, that the old way of addiction treatment needs to change, and that we really can't expect anybody to come out of a 30-day program or a 60-day program and get right back into life and be able to just manage this illness. You know, it takes many paths to recovery, medications, new medications that are out there, all kinds of recovery support groups, not just 12-step based, community support, medical support, you know, all of those things play a role in recovery today.
And we heard that at the last meeting. You were there talking about the drug court, and not just bring these people into to the court and send them off for treatment. It's surrounding them with all kinds of support.
Right, and
you know, whether that be
counseling
through the probation officers or
Right.
regular monitoring, bringing them back into the court to
Right.
To make sure that the program is working and what
And
needs
they're
to be added.
successful. And
they're
how can we
successful.
help them be successful?
Right, right.
The other thing is it just as from a parent's perspective, and I'm sure, you know, we live in a wonderful town. I grew up in this town. We love living here. We love raising our children here, and you know, there is sort of a false sense of security, I think, that we don't hear about a lot of the heroin or whatnot in our particular town, but the amount of alcohol and marijuana use in the town, I think, it's a consequence of the heroin epidemic that people are almost relieved that people are only using alcohol and marijuana, when in fact I've never met someone dependent on opiates that didn't start with alcohol and
something else.
marijuana. And I
Right.
think that families and parents need to understand what that trajectory really looks like and what the risk is for all of our kids, because opiate availability, whether it's heroin or pills or, you know, anything like that, it's readily available. It's readily available in our town. It's readily available on college campuses. It's readily available in the next town, and I think that you know, that I welcome parents to come to Coalition, to attend information forums that we're going to be doing. Education and knowledge about the possibility of addiction is, I think, is critical. It can really inform people of the seriousness, and that it's, you know, I do what I do for work, but I don't for one second think that it couldn't happen to one of my kids. I've been in recovery 30 years. We have alcoholism on both sides of the family, predisposition. So it's serious, and I welcome the community to participate in this effort.
Okay. So Karen, you're our primary health educator in the schools, and I think we tend to think that most of the attention to drug awareness information is at the secondary level, and indeed in the health classes that would be true, but certainly at the elementary level, even through programs such as Second Step or Steps to Respect that are part of our social learning curriculum, we call it. There are lessons about the challenges of dealing with peer influence. So we start at a very early age, even though it may not be about drugs per se. So, but talk about what we have in the health curriculum at the middle and the high school that is related to the drug abuse issue.
We have a K-12 comprehensive health education program, so it does start in kindergarten. When it comes to drugs and alcohol, we have lessons K-5, and they're on an age-based level. So simple things about medicines and what, harmful and helpful medicines, and those are important lessons for elementary school students. It's a dialogue that you can have. So we have lessons at every grade level that are done by the teachers, and they're coordinated, so they build upon one another. And then we also have, as you said, the Steps to Respect and Second Step. Those are implemented by our counseling department. And so, drug education or prevention education isn't always just about the drug and the information about that. It's also about building resilience with
And
kids.
attitudes, changing
Right.
attitudes, developing
and
attitudes.
so it may not have anything to do with talking about a particular drug that day. It might have to do with how do you make a good decision? How are you resilient? How can you build resilience? Building connectedness is really important. So all of our programs that deal with bullying and peer development and relationships really also have to do with supporting our kids to avoid substances and make better decisions. So those happen K-5. In 6th grade, we have the DARE program. So we have a great relationship with the Hingham Police Department, and they support us actually on every level. We have a safety officer at the elementary level, Officer John Marquardt. He does
John Walden this year.
He does
was new.
lessons. He does lessons in 5th and 6th grade about drugs, but also other safety issues. And then at the middle school, Officer Rob Ramsey is our DARE officer. He teaches an entire 6th grade course, a term for our students in 6th grade, and he does booster lessons in the health classes in 7th and 8th grade. And then at the high school, we do some lessons as well in 10th grade about substances, and we also have our school resource officer come in and help along with those. So it's multifaceted, and we have things at every level. We wish we had more time to do it, because it's just so important, and when there's only so much we can squeeze in. There's a lot to cover, but we do address it at every level.
At our last meeting, and Laurie and Meg were there, we had 4 students there from the SAD group, the officers of the SAD group. They're very articulate. I'm always very proud of our students and how articulate they are, both in writing and verbally. And so I think Fran was the person who asked them at the end to talk about why they got into the SAD organization, and in particular, what was the initial thing that got them thinking this might be something they'd like to do. And they all said the DARE program in grade 6 made them think about this, and then when they got to the high school and had this opportunity to be in a club, they gravitated toward that one.
So great.
So, so we do a couple of surveys, actually in alternate years. We survey students. Part of the state survey, the risk behavior, youth risk behavior survey, RYS, and in alternate years we do this survey that really is not so much about destructive decisions that kids make, which might be about as simple as driving with someone who's been drinking or using or abusing drugs themselves or alcohol or whatever. Youth risk behavior survey is really about those kinds of things, but this asset survey is really about assets And some of the things you talked about that we talk about in our elementary classes is really about developing assets. So talk about that one in particular and how that would relate to this discussion.
That's from the Search Institute, the Asset Development Survey, and so it does also ask questions about risk behavior, so we can see that every year about alcohol use and tobacco and things like that, but it also delves a lot deeper into what are protective assets, that connectedness, resiliency, the delayed gratification, to see how our students are doing there, and
Whether or not they have someone in their life that they can talk to, those kinds of things.
Those are very important questions. If they do have support inside of school and outside, what else they've got going on? Are they involved with sports or clubs or community groups? So that connectedness and involvement and investment in their own community. Somebody who has a lot of assets tend to make less risky decisions. So there's a relationship there. So, but we feel that using both of the surveys gives us, different perspective, important things to look at. We're actually doing the Youth Risk Behavior Survey tomorrow at the high school, and we've added. That's a survey we can change a bit. It's a Center for Disease Control survey, but we can add questions that are, or remove things that maybe aren't particular to our community. So we actually made some changes this year to add questions about prescription drug use, prescription, using a prescription drug that was not theirs, and just whether they've been prescribed a drug to treat an injury, especially painkillers, because that's what we're seeing in a lot of the things lately. Especially, there was a really great HBO special about Cape Cod and heroin. There was just a 2020 on, and every one of those shows talks about prescription medications being the start, and very often from athletes. So as you were saying earlier, Megan, that we have a community where our kids are highly involved in athletics, which is fantastic and protective usually, but that also means they might be vulnerable to injuries where they get a prescription medication that can lead them down a really different path. So we've just added those questions because we'd like to get a handle on that at the high school level, especially, is how many kids have been prescribed painkillers for legitimate reasons, just to see, and whether they're also taking someone else's prescription, not so legitimately. So we're going to get some interesting data this spring, some new data that we haven't seen.
And one of the things I'm proud of with respect to these surveys is that so you coordinate the administration and we get back the data and we have some longitudinal data. We give it at grades 6,
7.
7. Okay, both of them at 7.
We do the YRBS we do at 7, 9, and 11, and the asset survey, which is more complicated, you can't change it. We do that just at 9 and 11.
Okay.
So, but we can at least then look at that cohort group.
We get back very complete reports and we share them.
Yes, we
Lots
do.
of folks get the data because the data is important in planning our programs, our health instruction programs, and any activities that we might be wanting to run, and parent information nights and that sort of thing. So we use it for planning. But in many communities, they don't want to share,
They don't.
and we share. We think that people need to know the information. So the high school principal shares it in her newsletter as well. You do presentation, we share it with the school committee, we give it to the newspaper, we've shared it with this coalition, and it's
with
really
students.
important.
We share some data with students. I think that's important too. So I use it in my classroom in different topics, and I will share it with the students themselves. They should know what the data looks like, and have them look at normative data to say not everybody's doing things. That's an important aspect too.
Yes.
Is not everybody is doing things, and kids need to know that as well.
Right. And I want to talk a little bit more about, we have a wonderful group of kids at the high school, the SAD group, Students Against Destructive Decisions. It's actually one of our bigger club activities, the number of kids that are involved. And they do all sorts of things. And only some of them would be relative to drugs, but they all have to do with risky behaviors and what information they can give out. So several years ago, both of you came to an organization that we tried to get started which was to support these SAD students and all the things. And we survived for about 3 years, but didn't get the broad community input, the 12-sector approach that Fran spoke about. So we are so hoping that with this effort that we do get all the different sectors of the community and not just the kids and focusing on them. What are some of the things that our SAD students do?
Well, I'm not the advisor for that
No, I know
group,
you're not,
but
yeah.
they do awareness campaigns, so we'll have different things happen at school where they're helpful in putting up data, putting up posters, getting sort of the word out, or they'll support speaker programs, get kids to come to them. So they're involved sort of in that grassroots. They're also role models. I mean, that's one of the things I think is important, is to get the kids' perspective on what's going on. We think we know what's going on, but really getting the insight from the kids. So having them sit on committees and things is important. And just having them be peer leaders in the building.
Right.
And they also, when they can, it's not always possible, but they'll go down to the middle school or the elementary
Yes,
school
they talked about
and
that.
meet with the other kids, and they love it. The younger kids love that. And we try to make it happen as much as we can, because it's just a really great relationship. Though that's who those younger kids need to hear from, is the older kids that they look up to. So that's something I think they're really valuable and great at.
Right, and we're going to have them help us out at that drama
Yes.
that's coming on the 4th. We'll have a table of resources that Kathy will help organize, and have the students help with that, and also just getting out the publicity about that event to their peers and families as well. Okay, we're nearly at the end of our segment, so I just want to ask each of you if there's something that you would like to add or tell our audience that I didn't ask you about today. So, Meg, what do
I
you
think one thing I'm thinking is just that how welcome everyone is to our coalition, and that you can join in any capacity or none. I happen to join for programs and activities and outreach, and you can just be part of our email list to get information, but that if I know how busy all the parents in Hingham are, but that there's always a space for you and a certain time slot that you'd be welcome. You don't have to make a commitment in a certain amount of hours, but we'd love to have you.
Thanks. Lori?
Yeah, I think along those same lines, that just asking the community to work with us and be interested in this conversation and show some support behind it. I think everybody wants a healthy community. I think everybody wants our kids to be safe and healthy and avoid going down the wrong path. So I hope we see a lot of support.
I think just saying that it's a community issue, that it's not just about the kids, that there's adults and like you said, seniors. Everyone is affected by this. There's great resources out there. We do have a website. I have a website for my department that has got links to all kinds of different organizations, whether somebody's looking for support. So they can link to those through our Hingham Public Schools website. So even if you don't have a child in the school system, you can link on our websites and still find lots of great things there.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this session of Superintendent Spotlight, and in particular, I hope that we'll see some of you at an upcoming meeting of our coalition. You can get information about the coalition by contacting the Hingham Health Department at Town Hall. In particular, ask for Kathy Crowley, who will get you on our mailing list and welcome you when we next meet. We have some upcoming episodes of Superintendent Spotlight I'd like to share with you. Coming up actually next week, we're taping an episode that has to do with our social studies curriculum in Hingham, but in particular with how our social studies curriculum and activities that we have in the schools really connect with our veterans population, and what a wonderful resource they are to the education of our kids, both in terms of respect for what veterans do for us and as well history and they bring real life to that. So that will be something I'm looking forward to. As well, we'll have an episode coming up on Hingham athletics. You heard today, 70% of our high school students are involved in an interscholastic athletics program. So that will be a fun episode to watch. And as well, we'll have an episode that has to do with our school resource officers. And that resource and time was mentioned today. And with respect to the kinds of things that they do in the schools on a day-to-day basis, but also to talk a bit, and I'll say a bit because we don't want to share everything we do about security, but bring you a bit up to date. Thank you again for watching and listening today. Until next time, I'm Superintendent Dorothy Gallo.